Is your property eligible for listing in the National Register of Historic Places? What does it take to obtain that honor? We'll find out today on Warren County Preserves. Welcome to Warren County Preserves. I'm Joan Needham. Today we will learn about the National Register of Historic Places. We will explore a 100-year-old home that has been occupied by only 2 families. And we will visit a railroad town that contains the only intact African-American settlement in Warren County. The National Register is the official list of properties that are considered significant and worthy of preservation. The list is maintained and expanded by the National Park Service. And it is not just buildings that are listed, but anything that has the ability to speak about our past. In our area, bridges, Civil War landscapes, farms, a monument, and archaeological sites are all listed, as well as homes, churches, and commercial buildings. Many find listing to be an honorary designation and one that helps to develop community pride.
I think what this does, it shows a sense of value to preservation.
We all have a history, and we all have to know where we're going, but first we have to know where we come from. Also, you can pass that on to your children, and they can pass it on to their children's children, that you're just not in some little hick town, a little hick community, that there's history there, that it's something to be proud of.
A sense of pride is evident in the more than 80 individually listed sites and 7 districts in Bowling Green and Warren County. Currently in the process of nomination is an 8th district for the community of Oakland Freeport. Often, the nomination process begins with the property owner. However, the nomination for Oakland, which includes the African American settlement of Freeport, began with a group of Western Kentucky University students who recognized the ability of the town to tell a story about Warren County's past. Nomination forms and bulletins that give step-by-step instructions can be found online or obtained by contacting the National Park Service. Nominations are reviewed on 3 different levels before official listing: local, state, and national. A typical nomination will include a physical description, an essay on the property's history, a bibliography, maps, and black and white photographs. In order to be eligible for listing in the National Register, a property must be significant for its association with important events or persons, for its importance in design or construction, or for its information potential. Oakland Freeport is important because the physical landscape of the town reflects how railroad towns and Reconstruction-era African American communities developed. Like many prosperous Warren County railroad towns, Oakland developed with the railroad serving almost as the main street with commercial structures on either side. Remaining are a general store, the post office, and Oakland's first bank building. Longtime resident Linda Hill remembers that even when she was a child, the railroad was an integral part of life in Oakland and Freeport.
When my grandfather was living, we had 2 cows, May and Josie, and he used to milk the cows and take the milk in a milk can and go down to the end of the track and wait for the milkman to come through and take his milk to market.
On the south side of Oakland's commercial area is a residential district. Many of these houses were homes to the town's early white builders, including merchants and doctors. The residential area to the north of the railroad includes more homes of white settlers as well as the homes of former slaves who helped build the town. This area is part of the African American community known as Freeport. The saddlebag houses that remain were likely constructed in the 1890s for teachers of the African American school, the Oakland Academy. The Center for African American Community Life was the school and church, which together served the purposes of education, social outlet, and religion. An example of the religious-centered sense of community is illustrated by the generosity of the entire community. During the Depression, Freeport neighbors shared their possessions and labor with one another in keeping with their religious beliefs regarding charity. That sense of selflessness was not just a characterization of late 19th century Oakland, but carried on for years afterwards.
We never had to have a sheriff. We always slept with the doors open. Didn't have any crimes, anything like that, and that was amazing because we never locked our doors. And there used to be trains to come through a lot and had hobos, and they would jump off and we would feed them. You know, we don't even see that anymore.
Documenting and reviewing our history through processes like listing in the National Register help us to understand who we are today by revealing who we were yesterday. When we return, we'll visit a National Register house that reminded one of its earliest occupants of Cinderella's castle. Welcome back to Warren County Preserves. I'm Joan Needham. Listing in the National Register doesn't change what you can or cannot do with your property, but it certainly can change your appreciation of your property. For instance, what might have been viewed as just an old house can be transformed into a local landmark if its history is known. The Farnsworth House, recently rehabilitated by Deborah and Gary West, was listed in the National Register in 1977 as part of the College Hill National Register District. The Wests feel that listing not only documents and recognizes the history of their house, but also helps to add to the enjoyment of their home.
It's kind of special when you figure that you have lived in a house that only one family has owned before you, and the house is almost 100 years old, and it's just kind of special to live in a place that's kind of known for a lot of history here and the beauty of it. We feel very fortunate, Deborah and I do, to be here.
The Wests learned that the beauty of the place is what also caught the attention of one of its first occupants, Louise Farnsworth, who was only a child when she first came to live at the house.
Louise Farnsworth lived here for 94 years. Her mother and dad built the house starting in 1905 with construction and finishing in 1908. The story goes that with her grandmother, they pulled up in 1908 on a snowy late afternoon, and lights were on from inside the house shining outward, and she pulled up in a horse-drawn taxi, and she remarked to her grandmother that the house looked just like Cinderella's castle.
The reason the house seemed to sparkle to young Louise was because of the leaded glass front door and side lights. The Wests learned that the glass was imported from Florence, Italy in 1907. In addition to this marquee feature, the house retains many of its original elements.
The light fixture that we have in our dining room was pre-Civil War. It was an old gas light that we have restored, and it originally hung in the parlor, the room in which we're sitting now, but we moved it to the dining room, and in its place there was a Tiffany-like light. It was given by Louise's father to Louise's mother as a Christmas gift in 1910. So that also has a special place in the house. We have some incredible pocket doors, 2 sets of 9-foot pocket doors. It's equally fantastic that the original keys to the doors were still in place. And when you stop to think about a house that's almost 100 years old, that you still have these little keys that are sitting in the door. We also have retained an old kitchen sink that we had that was the original to the house. An old cast iron sink that literally feels like it weighs a ton. And when we were trying to update and modernize the kitchen, and Deborah had designed the kitchen, we really didn't have a place for this kitchen sink. So myself and another worker drug it out to the back porch. I tried giving it away for several weeks. It was so heavy, nobody wanted it. So a few days later, I'm watching Home and Garden television, and I see this house they're going through, and they showed a sink exactly like the one that I have. And they said, it's so rare, if you can find these, you want to make sure you hang on to it. Well, I immediately went outside and almost sat up all night watching this sink, thinking someone was going to steal it from me after I had tried giving it away for weeks.
Physical elements also revealed information about the home's original occupants.
Our back porch, we've restored it. It was originally screened in, and I have found out before the screening, it was an old lattice porch. It was covered with lattice, I guess to maintain some privacy. I understand there were a couple of stoves in its day back there that they did the summer cooking out there, and they had another stove that they used to make soap and what have you, in my research I've found. But what we've done, we've maintained this old elevator that the Farnsworth family reportedly bought from Woolworths in 1939. And I believe the price that they paid for the elevator and to have it installed was $187 back then. But the elevator was brought in so that it would carry Louise's mother up and down the staircase, up and down the elevator once a day. She had a heart condition and the steps were too much for her to undertake, so they would put her on the elevator and take her up and down and bring her through a window up in the upstairs bathroom and then into her bedrooms. We noticed in the kitchen, it looks like a little pipe extension. And then there was also one upstairs, and we really weren't sure what they were. And then someone came through the house and said, oh, that's a whistle tube, and which was an early day intercom system. And it comes out of the kitchen into the upstairs hall, and we can imagine that some morning that Louise Farnsworth's mother was fixing breakfast and she would holler through the whistle tube, maybe even whistle or yell so that they would know that the breakfast or whatever meal they were serving was ready.
A whistle tube, a sink, an elevator. These are the types of elements that are included in a nomination for the National Register. And that's why the National Register is so important. It tells us the way people used to live. It documents our history and gives us an appreciation for our valuable historic resources.
I think what this does, it shows, to me, it shows a sense of value to preservation. And we're not preservation purists by any means, but we still recognize the importance of hanging on to our past. We recognize that it has a place in Bowling Green's history of Old Bowling Green. And we recognize what the Farnsworth name means to the community, and we're trying to keep that alive.